So now that you have a primer on accessibility and the technical aspects of the new theme, we'll be talking about how to develop and implement your content for these new design blocks. One note, if you hear us slip and refer to the design blocks as paragraphs, just know we are talking about the design blocks. When they were first designed, they were called paragraphs, but now we refer to them as design blocks so as not to confuse them with written paragraphs. So with that out of the way, let's dive in. Today we'll be covering how to think about your content and navigation strategy and then how to plan out your content for the actual page design. We'll also go over some tips for writing for the web and recommendations for creating content for two specific design blocks. These recommendations come from a guide that we've developed that includes recommendations for most of the design blocks that you've seen today and most of them that you'll be working with. These go beyond technical requirements and aim to help you create content that will display well on your sites. You'll get a link to this guide as well as the demo page referred to earlier at the end of the presentation. And finally, we'll touch on using images as content and the importance of thinking about different screen sizes when you're planning out your content.
Hi, so when looking at your content and navigation strategy, this is basically the foundation of your website. And when we went through our redesign about a year ago, we not only changed the way the website looked, we obviously went through a content and navigation strategy as well. So we shifted from an organization-based strategy to a topic-based navigation strategy. You can see that with our menu items about academics, admissions and aids, student success, campus life, public good. These pages are gateway pages that hold information not from a single office or division, but from multiple sources. We found this to be more user-friendly. Students can easily find the topic that they're looking for without looking for the office that provides that service. Also, the content has been changed to a tone that addresses our priority audience, which is our current students. So when you're looking at your navigation, you're looking at something that's more than just your menu. It should be your whole landing page, including the content on the landing page. So your landing page is basically your elevator pitch. As soon as a user goes onto your landing page, they should be able to see who you are, where you are, and what you provide. We have created a set of design blocks that are a tool set to support your navigation. So you'll basically be able to put in a visual image, a heading, maybe some brief teaser content that guides your user to click on your call to action button, otherwise known as a CTA, to go deeper into your subpages. So when you're looking at your content strategy and developing it, you should reimagine your content. You should basically sit down and look at your content and not just copy and paste over your old content into the new theme. What you really want to do is identify your audience and your goals and craft your content around that. You want to rewrite your content to be shorter, which will allow for scanning and which will also improve your accessibility. While you're doing this, we recommend and strongly encourage that you remove outdated content from your pages. And if the page is outdated as a whole, just delete the page.
So as Caroline mentioned, we want to emphasize the importance of thinking about and mapping out your content before diving into these new designs. Some of your first steps should be to think about who your website is primarily for. Is it for current students, prospective students? Is it for faculty and staff? Design your page around what your primary users need and want to know and what you want them to do on your site. Early on, you will want to also decide what menu items are needed for your navigation. Remember, though, that your navigation is not just your menu. Your landing page is also a tool that can help guide your users deeper into your page. Keep your menu titles short and aim for around 6 or 7 items depending on their lengths. As you can see here on this slide, in this menu from the Center for Academic Success, some menus are longer than others, so menu items are longer than others. So you'll want to take that into account when you're deciding how many to include. On smaller screen sizes, the menu will wrap if you have too many items. When you're setting out to develop the actual content for your page, an outline can be useful to map out the information you plan to include. Throughout the process, you'll want to ask, where do you want your primary audience to go next? So after each section, where should they go or what should they do? This will determine your call to action buttons. What introductory content is needed to persuade them to click? Is an image going to help your content or is it not? If it doesn't, consider choosing a block without an image. The process of selecting and laying out which design blocks to use to showcase your content will likely involve some trial and error, and that's why an outline is really useful to use. When you begin to add in content to the actual design blocks, you may need to adjust your headings and copy length to optimize the display of your content on the page, or you may discover that another block will probably work better. It's also important to keep in mind appropriate heading order, which Jimmy and Leon discussed earlier. You'll also want a good balance of text and images and varied design blocks to present a page that flows for the user visually and informationally. A big part of this is through the use of CTAs, or call to action buttons, that guide the user about where they should pay attention. So you can see in this screenshot of this webpage in the new theme, you can easily scan the website and see what you need to know, and it also flows and has a balance to it. As Caroline also mentioned earlier, overall, we've aimed to shift the tone of the university website with this redesign from academic and formal to more conversational, informal, and student targeted. So when you're writing for the web, you're really writing for scanning. Studies show that users on websites quickly scan for relevant content rather than reading long chunks of text. You probably can relate to this from your own internet browsing. So it's important to write short, accessible content. Use brief headers and short sentences to grab your user's attention. Avoid acronyms, especially those that are not widely used and familiar. So for instance, many people know what CEO stands for, but they might not know all of the acronyms that we use at the university or in our offices or in academia. Your CTAs should be descriptive. When possible, avoid read more or learn more, like Leon and Jimmy mentioned earlier, and opt for something more descriptive, like apply now, watch video, get involved, track your hours, so that those who are using your website know what they're going to when they click the link, and it's also vital for those using assistive technology and screen readers.
So creating content for design blocks. So our office, along with ITS, we created a guidebook for how to use these design blocks, not only for the technical aspect, but also for the content. So during this training, we're going to go over 2 design blocks that we use the most frequently in our office. One is image with site text, and the other one is cards. So image with site text is probably the most common block that we use in our office. It's basically one of your Lego blocks. So each of these design blocks are stackable elements that you will use to create your whole page. And this one is pretty versatile. It includes preview descriptions that can link to further information through a call to action link or button, or you can not use a CTA and have it as a standalone. You have space for a dramatic visual, and you want to use minimal copy, which I'll get to in the next couple slides. So here, our recommendation for your image for this block is avoid using text on images. Basically, when your image is seen on different screen sizes, the image size might vary and can cut off parts of your image and cut off your text. So it is better to put the description of the image content in the gray box next to it and not put it on the image itself. And again, we want to keep it short. We want to use minimal copy. You want to have a heading field to ensure proper spacing. Stay within about 300 characters or less for the text. Now this will help with scanning and increase accessibility. Also, this should be a teaser text that encourages your user to go into a more informative and detailed subpage. And if you were to use a very long text paragraph inside this design block, it would look horrible on your mobile device. So with cards, this is another design block that we use very frequently. It's basically best for showcasing programs and initiatives or news. It can be used without images. Our recommendation is that you either go all in one way or the other. So you want to use images for all three if you plan to use it for one, or you want to avoid using images for all three if you plan to not use images. Again, this is also a place where you would want to avoid using text inside the image unless it's like a simple logo. Please keep the character count for the descriptions to 180 or less. Technically, it does allow up to 200, but we just found that 180 or less is best for content.
Okay, I'm going to briefly talk about images and how they relate to our design blocks. While images are used as design elements on our pages, we need to remember that they are still considered content. They help reinforce the messages that you're trying to deliver to visitors on your website. And if so, it's important that we use images properly, both visually and technically on the back end. There are a few points you should keep in mind when using images on your pages. 1, Google crawls the content, your text, as well as the file names on your images. As you can see on the example to the left, to the right, sorry, the first file name is brief but descriptive and will help your images in terms of SEO. The second example will not likely benefit you. The next few points have more to do with accessibility. Be sure that you're using alt text on all the images you post and make sure the alt text is brief but descriptive. Good alt text will help those with low to no vision who use screen readers still understand the content on your site. Next, save your images for web. This will aid in reducing the file sizes of the images and help your pages with loading times. It's important to note that not everybody will be viewing your pages from strong Wi-Fi connection. In fact, a large percentage of users could likely be using their phone's data, in which the internet speeds are going to vary from person to person. Lastly, be sure to use appropriate file types. Know the difference between a JPEG, a GIF, a PNG, an SVG, and when it's beneficial to use each. Some are probably, larger than others, and you don't actually have to use that file type. In terms of our design blocks, compressed JPEGs will work most of the time. We're now going to talk about choosing the right image. Let's assume you've decided you need to use an image for some of the content you're about to use. When picking the image, make sure your image is relevant to the content that it will be displayed next to. Looking at the example to the right, we could see that the design paragraph is focusing on a message about undergraduate deadlines. The photo to the left of the text is of a large group standing in front of a wall. Just at a glance, I see a large group of people, but the subjects in it are so small that I can't see the details. We don't really know who these people are. Are they students? Are they faculty? Are they alumni? What event is this? There's no signage anywhere. Bottom line, it doesn't help me to deliver an effective message. Without knowing the context of the photo, which most visitors won't know either, this photo doesn't really help reinforce the message I'm trying to deliver on the right-hand side. Now, when I change the photo, we can see that the image is more strongly connected to the message on the right-hand side. While not explicitly stating so, we can make a pretty good assumption that the person in this photo is a student. With the information on the right telling us that this section is about undergraduate deadlines, we can further assume that they're an undergraduate student. Together, both the text and the photo help effectively convey the message that this section is going to be geared towards undergraduate students. Aside from making sure the image is relevant, we want to make sure the image is also flattering and appropriate. Make sure that the subject's eyes are open, no unflattering open mouth poses or somebody eating. Make sure the subjects are not with their backs towards the cameras. And please try not to crop anybody's body parts off, in the photo. And just a quick rule of thumb, picture yourself in this photo. Would you like it posted online, or would you rather find something that would present you in a more flattering light? Next, as we saw with the example on the previous slide, we want to make sure that our images have a strong focus on the subject. Again, avoid large group photos as much as possible. The details in group photos are just a lot harder to make out in smaller areas, especially when you use them in paragraphs. They're going to be a lot smaller than the high-res photo that you're going to be working with, that you get. Smaller groups might be workable sometimes, but in either case, we recommend using different images altogether. Use photos where the subject is clear and visible. As you can see on the right-hand side, we're focused in on the dog. It's a smaller group of people. You can see a lot more detail, and the subject is really, it's visible. It's clear what's in the photo. Remember, the image you use should help enhance your message and not make it harder to interpret. Next, let's assume you've picked the perfect image for your content. Sometimes just a little bit of cropping is going to enhance your image significantly. As we can see in this example, we've cropped out a lot of the people who are distracting from the focus of our photo. By cropping and zooming a little bit into our subject, we're able to see more details on the photo. In this case, we see more of her expression and the thumbs up that she's giving. There's less kind of clutter surrounding her in the photo. Just a few minutes of editing, we turned a really good image into a great image. Planning ahead. Let's say you're laying out your page and you have a design block that you really want to use. Keep in mind that some of the design blocks work better with certain size photos. For example, the slider on the tabs that you see on the right-hand side, it works really well with very wide screen-sized images that are going to take up the whole screen size. If you want to use this design block, just be sure you select photos that fit the requirements. If you don't have that photo, plan ahead and make sure you let your photographer know that you need something that is more widescreen. A quick note, many if not all the design blocks will have size requirements that will help you in your photo selection. Just be sure to reference the design block guide to verify the sizes. Keeping screen size in mind. This is a really important subject, and we deal with it on an everyday basis. It's an important topic because of how many devices we all consume our media on. And even then, we all don't use the same type of devices, which will result in various screen sizes across similar devices. This next couple of slides are a little bit more technical, but still important for you to keep in mind when you're building your pages and selecting images. Again, some content may not work well for smaller devices. So we built some of these design blocks to have both a desktop and a mobile image. The example to the right shows how we took one image and made two versions of it for different screen sizes. As you can see, the image on the top is a version of this photo that was made for, a desktop or a laptop computer. The image on the bottom was made for mobile. In both images, we tried not to crop anybody out, and luckily, the image was able to work for both devices. That might not be the case for some photos, and you might have to use different photos for mobile as well as desktop. In this case, this photo happened to work well for us for both. Lastly, another point for screen sizes and keeping everything in mind is to use the inspectors on your browser. In our office, we constantly use the inspector tool in our browser in order to see what our content looks like on different devices. The inspector lets you change your browser window to the screen size of popular devices, and also lets you change the orientation from landscape to portrait and portrait to landscape. For most browsers, you can access the inspector by right-clicking on the browser window and selecting it from the menu items. The images on this slide are an example of what an inspector looks like in Firefox. I have a page on our website in tablet view, and I have a page on our website in a tablet view in portrait mode. There's a button on there where you could change the orientation to see if your content looks good if you're holding your iPad in a landscape mode or a portrait mode. Whether you use the inspector or an actual device, we strongly recommend for you to preview your content on as many devices as you can, so that no matter who's looking at your content, they'll be getting a clear and effective message.
So you've absorbed a lot of useful information today that will help you as you begin to think about using the new website theme. But one important takeaway we want to leave you with is that the work of developing websites is continuous and ongoing. It's really important to remember that your website is not static or set in stone. It will need to be updated and refreshed as time goes on and as programs and information change. A good approach is to identify timelines for when content needs to be refreshed. That could be every semester, maybe every month, maybe every year, depending on your area. You should decide who's responsible for checking and updating content and who can assist with proofreading. It's really important to remember that no matter how good of a writer you are, you always should have a second pair of eyes check your work. You'll want to ask if all the content is still valid, if dates are in the past, if applications and links are still live, and finally, make sure your page still flows well with any updates you make. From our experience, sometimes when you make updates, you'll find you need to adjust the rest of the page too, especially when you're working with these design blocks.
Okay, so there was a lot of content that we covered today, let's face it. And we don't expect you at all to remember everything. And that's why our extensive team has put together these amazing resources. So our Drupal support page, our web accessibility support page, the writing for the web Canvas course, that's up, editorial style guide, design block guide, and demo page. So I'm not going to open all of these, but I do want to show you the Drupal support site. So let me go ahead and open this. All right, so the Drupal support site contains pretty much the step-by-step guides on a lot of the basic stuff that you already know, but we also have a lot of the new stuff in here too. So using design blocks, that's in here. So eventually when you are working on your own site and you're putting together those design blocks, instead of just referring to, let's say, the demo landing page and then playing around with things, you can also come to the Drupal support site and then get the step-by-step instructions on how to actually do things if you need to refer to them. It goes on and on here. We have a lot of different things, even, managing your group related stuff. So just keep that in mind. And besides that, we also have our web accessibility page that we're linking to. This has not only the guidelines, but also testing and reports. So we have a lot of good stuff linked on here for you. And, feel free to explore the rest of the site as well. The Writing for Web Canvas course, this will link to a self-enrollment URL. So when you do access this, when we share this presentation slide with you, when you access this, just self-enroll in the Canvas course. What we've done is we've embedded the workshop recordings from the ones that you may or may not have gone to in the past. And we've also linked the presentation slides for you there too. So when you get access to that, it's all for you. You can refer to everything from that course. And then there's, of course, the editorial style guide, the design block guide. Some of these are different. Jillian, do you want to say anything about the design block guide?
Yes, I can. So the design block guide looks almost exactly like the demo page. But right at the bottom of each example design block, there are some content recommendations. We'll also be adding image sizes and everything as well. But these are basically recommendations for how you can best display your content based on our experience using the design blocks.
Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.